The stars had never seemed so close. Jihu Kim stood at the window of the shuttle, watching alien ships glide past like silver fish in an endless ocean. He had dreamed of this moment his entire life. First contact, humanity's introduction to the galaxy. But now that it was here, fear gripped his chest like ice. The shuttle docked with a station bigger than Earth's moon. Jihu stepped out with his small team of diplomats and scientists. The air smelled strange, like copper and flowers mixed together. Aliens of every shape and color filled the corridors. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others floated or crawled or moved in ways that hurt to watch. A tall being made of living crystal approached. Its body caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. When it spoke, the words came from everywhere at once. I am Veloth, Supreme Arbiter of the Galactic Council. Welcome to Axios Prime, humans. You are the youngest species to reach the stars in 3,000 years. Jihu bowed slightly the way his briefing had instructed. Thank you for receiving us. Earth is honored to join the galactic community. Veloth's crystalline face had no expression, but something in its voice made Jihu's skin crawl. There are rules, Ambassador Kim. Rules that have kept the galaxy at peace for 10,000 years. You must follow them or you cannot stay. The council chamber was a massive sphere floating in space. Representatives from 100 species sat in rings around the center. Veloth brought the humans to stand in a beam of light that made them visible to everyone. The most important law is the Silence Protocol, Veloth announced. All weapons of war are forbidden. All military forces must be dissolved. Conflicts are resolved through votes and trade agreements, never violence. This is how we achieved perfect peace. Jihu felt his blood run cold. You want us to destroy our defenses? All of them? Yes, every warship, every weapon, every soldier must return to civilian life. This is not negotiable. Peace or exile, choose. The humans looked at each other. Back on Earth, Admiral Heejin Park had warned them this might happen. She had begged them to refuse, to keep Earth's military strong. But the politicians wanted to join the galaxy. They wanted the trade, the technology, the wealth that came with membership. Jihu took a deep breath. We need time to discuss this with our government. You have one Earth month, Veloth said. Then you decide. The debates on Earth lasted for weeks. Admiral Park stood before the World Assembly, her uniform covered in medals from a dozen conflicts. She was a small woman with iron in her eyes. This is a trap, she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. No civilization gives up its ability to defend itself. Something is wrong here, General Minho Choi agreed. He was older than Park, with gray hair and scars on his hands. The Silence Protocol sounds beautiful. But what happens when someone breaks it? Who enforces the peace? But the politicians didn't listen. President Yoon Ji-kwon addressed the assembly with tears in her eyes. We have a chance to end war forever. No more soldiers dying. No more weapons. Just peace and prosperity. Isn't that what we've always wanted? The vote passed. Earth would join the Galactic Council. Earth would accept the Silence Protocol. Admiral Park watched from the bridge of the USS Indomitable as the dismantling began. Captain Doyen Lee stood beside her, his jaw tight with anger. The Indomitable was the pride of Earth's fleet, a battlecruiser that had protected humanity's colonies for 20 years. They're gutting her, Lee said quietly, stripping out the weapons, the armor, everything that made her strong. Park said nothing. What could she say? Orders were orders. A young officer named Young-Soo Han approached them. Admiral, is this really the right choice? What if the peace doesn't last? Park turned to look at him. Han was barely 25, fresh from the academy. He had never seen real combat. She envied him that innocence. I don't know, Lieutenant, she admitted, but we follow our orders. That's what soldiers do. Across human space, the great disarmament continued. Weapons factories were converted to build civilian goods. Warships were broken down for scrap metal. Soldiers returned to their families and tried to remember what normal life felt like. General Choi watched it all with growing dread. Late at night, in his private quarters, he made secret plans. He contacted trusted officers and engineers. If the protocol was a trap, humanity would need a backup plan. Something hidden, something ready. 20 years passed like a dream. Earth grew wealthy beyond imagination. Alien technology transformed cities into gleaming towers of glass and light. Humans spread across the galaxy, building colonies on 1,000 worlds. Trade ships carried goods between the stars. It seemed the Council had been right. Peace was possible. Jiwan Bayek stood on an orbital platform, watching construction robots build a massive trading station. She was an engineer, young and brilliant. Her designs had won awards. This station would be her masterpiece. Her brother Taijin called on the communications link. His face appeared on her screen, smiling in his Peace Fleet uniform. The Peace Fleet was all that remained of Earth's military, unarmed ships used only for rescue and exploration. "The station looks amazing, Ji-won," he said. "When will it be finished?" 6 more months, she replied. "Then it will handle more trade than any other human facility. We're really part of the galaxy now." Taijin's smile faded slightly. "Have you heard the rumors? About ships disappearing near the outer colonies?" Ji-won frowned. "Pirates, probably. Nothing serious, maybe," Taijin said, but he didn't sound convinced. In the outer reaches of human space, colony ships did disappear. At first, it was one every few months. Easy to explain away as accidents or navigation errors. Space was dangerous, after all. But those who paid attention noticed a pattern. The disappearances always happened near the Veil Nebula, a region of space thick with gas and dust. Sensors didn't work well there. Ships went in and never came out. A freight captain named Soman Yu stumbled onto wreckage while hauling supplies to a mining colony. Her ship's scanners picked up debris, metal twisted by incredible heat. She moved closer, her hands trembling on the controls. Among the wreckage, she found bodies, human bodies frozen in the void, and her scanners detected something that made her heart stop. Weapons signatures, military-grade plasma burns, weapons that hadn't existed in human space for 20 years. Weapons that shouldn't exist anywhere, according to the Silence Protocol. Soman recorded everything and jumped to the nearest council station. She demanded to speak with officials, showed them her evidence, begged them to investigate. The council representative, a slug-like being with too many eyes, barely looked at her data. "Pirates," it said dismissively. "Rogue elements who refuse to follow the protocol. Nothing more. We will handle it." "But the weapons," Soman insisted. "Where did pirates get military weapons?" "That is not your concern, human. Return to your route." Soman left the station feeling sick. Something was terribly wrong. The council was lying. She could feel it in her bones. She sent encrypted messages to Earth to anyone who might listen. Most ignored her, but one person paid attention. Admiral Hyejin Park, now retired and living quietly on Mars, received Soman's data and felt the old instincts wake up inside her. Park had spent 20 years trying to forget she was a soldier. But soldiers never truly retire. They just wait for the next war. And looking at Soman's evidence, Park knew the waiting was over. Admiral Hyejin Park hadn't touched a weapon in 20 years. Her hands shook as she loaded Soman Yu's data into her personal computer. The evidence was clear. Plasma burns, kinetic impacts, weapon signatures that matched nothing in human records but everything in old Galactic Council military databases. Someone was hunting humans with military weapons. And the Council was pretending not to notice. Park sent messages to old contacts, people she had trusted with her life during the war days. Most didn't respond. They had moved on, built new lives. But a few answered. General Minho Choi was one of them. They met in a small restaurant on Mars in a district where surveillance was weak. Choi looked older than Park remembered. His hair was completely white now, and he moved like his bones hurt, but his eyes were still sharp. "I knew you'd call eventually," Choi said, sitting down across from her. "I've been tracking the disappearances too. 47 colony ships in the last 2 years. That's not pirates. That's systematic extermination." Park slid her tablet across the table. "Look at the patterns. The attacks happen in zones where council patrols never go, like someone knows exactly where the blind spots are." Choi studied the data, his face growing darker. "We need proof. Hard proof that the council is involved." As if answering a prayer they hadn't spoken. That proof walked through the door 3 days later, not literally through a door, but through encrypted channels that only military intelligence knew existed. An alien defector named Thraxus, an insectoid engineer with 4 arms and compound eyes, sent a message that changed everything. Park and Choi met Thraxus on an abandoned mining station far from any major routes. The alien was terrified, its exoskeleton clicking nervously as it spoke through a translation device. "The protocol is a lie," Thraxus said without preamble. "The Council's founding species never disarmed. The Velothians, the Carrick Swarm, the Drevine Empire, they all maintain secret fleets. Massive fleets hidden in dead zones where sensors cannot reach. Park felt her stomach drop. Why? Why create the protocol if they weren't following it? To make younger species defenseless, Thraxus explained. Every few centuries, when a new species reaches the stars, the Council offers them membership, peace, prosperity. And once they disarm, once they're helpless, the hunting begins. Some species are enslaved. Others are wiped out. Humanity is scheduled for extermination. Your colonies are being erased systematically. In 10 years, none of you will remain. Choi's fist hit the table hard enough to dent the metal. How many species have they done this to? 17 that I know of. Probably more. Park's mind raced through the implications. Humanity had been betrayed from the beginning. Every promise, every treaty, every word of peace, all lies designed to make them vulnerable. Anger burned in her chest like a star-going nova. Why are you telling us this? She asked. Thraxus's compound eyes reflected the dim lights. Because I am tired of being part of genocide. Because my species was one of the first to be tricked. And we survived only by becoming the Council's servants. I want to stop being a slave, and I think humanity might be strong enough to fight back. They had to bring this to Earth's government. Park and Choi took Thraxus and all the evidence to Geneva, where the World Assembly met. Security was tight. Half the representatives thought Park was insane. The other half were too scared to believe her. President Yoonji Kwon listened to everything in silence. She was older now, her hair gray, her face lined with the weight of leadership. When Thraxus finished speaking, she sat back in her chair and closed her eyes. If this is true, Kwon said slowly, then we face a choice. We can run, scatter humanity across the galaxy and hope some of us survive in hiding. Or we can fight. We can't fight, one of the assembly members said. We have no military. No weapons, nothing. Park stood up, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Then we build them, in secret. We have 5 years, maybe 10 before they move openly against Earth itself. That's enough time if we start now. It's also treason, another member said. Breaking the protocol means war with the entire Council. They're already at war with us, Choi growled. We just didn't know it. The debate lasted for hours. Some wanted to bring the evidence to the Council, to demand an investigation. But Thraxus explained that would only speed up the extermination. The Council would deny everything and move up their timeline. Finally, President Kwon made her decision. We rebuild our military. In absolute secrecy. We tell no one outside this room. And we pray to whatever God still listen that we have enough time. The order went out through encrypted channels to the most trusted military personnel. Admiral Park was given overall command. General Choi was tasked with finding resources and building facilities where the Council wouldn't look. Doyen Lee was teaching engineering at a university when Park contacted him. He had been a captain once, one of the best. Now he was a civilian, trying to forget the weight of command. When he saw Park's message, his hands trembled. They met in his small apartment. Park didn't waste words. I need you, Lee. I need the officer you used to be. Lee looked at her for a long moment. What are we building? A navy, a real one. War machines. In 5 years? Park, that's impossible. We scrapped everything. The shipyards are gone. The weapons factories are converted. I know what we need, and I know it's impossible. But we do it anyway or we die. Park's eyes were hard. Can you help me or do I need to find someone else? Lee thought of his crew on the Indomitable. Good people. Now scattered across the solar system, living ordinary lives. He thought of his brother's family on the colony of New Sol. 3 children who loved to hear his stories about space. When do we start? He asked. The secret rebuilding began. Old officers were contacted one by one, sworn to secrecy and brought into the program. Doyen Lee found himself coordinating with engineers and shipbuilders, designing new vessels using old blueprints and alien technology that Thraxus helped them understand. General Choi led teams to abandoned asteroid bases and forgotten mining facilities. In the deepest parts of the solar system, where Council patrols never went, they started constructing shipyards. Small at first, just enough to build fighters and corvettes. A young engineer named Jiwon Bayek was recruited because of her innovative designs. When they told her the truth about the Council, she didn't believe it at first. But the evidence was overwhelming. Her brother Taejin was still in the Peace Fleet, still believing the galaxy was safe. She wanted to tell him but couldn't. Security was absolute. Instead, she threw herself into the work. She studied the weapon signatures from Soman's wreckage and reverse-engineered them. Human engineering combined with alien technology produced something new, something deadly. The first ships started taking shape in the hidden yards. They weren't the massive battle cruisers that had been scrapped. They couldn't build those in time. Instead, they designed smaller, faster vessels. Stealth frigates that could hide from sensors and strike without warning. Young Su Han, the young lieutenant who had questioned the protocol 20 years ago, was now a commander. When Park recruited him, he felt vindicated and terrified at the same time. He had been right to doubt. But being right meant war was coming. 2 years into the secret rebuilding, disaster nearly struck. A council inspection team arrived at Mars without warning, wanting to tour civilian facilities. They came within kilometers of one of the hidden construction sites. Park watched from a command center, her heart pounding as the inspection team's ships drifted past the asteroid base. If they scanned too deeply, if they looked too carefully, everything would be revealed. But luck held. Or perhaps the council was arrogant enough to believe humans could never deceive them. The inspection team found nothing and left. After they were gone, Park allowed herself one moment of weakness. She sat alone in her quarters and shook. They had come so close to discovery. If the council found out now, before the fleet was ready, humanity would be wiped out in days. 3 years in, they had 30 ships operational. 30 against fleets of thousands. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was better than nothing. That's when General Choi revealed his secret. He called a meeting of the command staff and showed them old security footage from 25 years ago, back when the disarmament was happening. "I never trusted the protocol," Choi said. "I knew in my bones it was wrong, so I disobeyed orders. I took resources that should have been scrapped and hid them." The footage showed automated construction sites deep in the asteroid belt, hidden so well that even Park hadn't known about them. "I was court-martialed for it," General Minho Choi said, his voice steady as the command staff stared at the security footage. "Accused of treason. Stripped of my rank. They let me retire quietly instead of putting me in prison because I agreed to disappear and never speak of it again." Admiral Heejin Park leaned forward, studying the images. Deep in the asteroid belt, hidden among billions of tons of rock, she could see the unmistakable outline of a military complex. "Not ruins, not wreckage. An active facility. What's in there?" Park asked. Choi smiled grimly. 30 warships. Not the new stealth frigates we've been building. These are older designs, but fully armed and operational. I sealed them away 25 years ago with skeleton crews in cryosleep, waiting for the day we might need them. Doyen Lee let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. 30 ships. That changes everything. We might actually have a chance. They traveled to the hidden base in secret. Commander Sora Nam led the expedition, a quiet woman with sharp eyes who had made a name for herself in covert operations. She had spent the last 3 years running reconnaissance missions into Council space, mapping their patrol routes and blind spots. The asteroid complex was a marvel of paranoid engineering. From the outside, it looked like any other lifeless rock, but inside, massive hangar bays held ships that hadn't seen stars in decades. The crews were beginning to wake from cryosleep, groggy and confused. Choi walked through the facility like a ghost visiting its own grave. I called them Wraith-class frigates, designed for guerrilla warfare, fast, stealthy, and equipped with weapons that can punch far above their weight. Each one has a crew of only 50 people, but they can do the damage of a ship 3 times their size. Park ran her hand along the hull of the nearest ship. The metal was cold under her fingers. "You saved us, Choi. You knew this day would come." "I prayed I was wrong," Choi admitted. "I hoped I had wasted resources on paranoia. But hope is not a strategy." The discovery of Choi's hidden arsenal accelerated the timeline. Combined with the new ships being built in the scattered shipyards, humanity now had 90 vessels. Still nowhere near enough to face the Council in open battle, but enough to start fighting back. Park called a strategy meeting. All the senior commanders gathered in a secure facility on one of Jupiter's moons. The room was tense with anticipation. "We can't fight them head-on," Park began. "The Council has thousands of ships, maybe tens of thousands, but they're complacent. They've been unopposed for so long that they've forgotten how to really fight. That's our advantage." Commander Soranam pulled up tactical displays. "I've identified 17 locations where Council forces are hunting our colonies. Small raiding groups, usually 5 to 10 ships. They strike fast and disappear into the nebula. We can use the same tactics against them. Lieutenant Aaron Che, who had been recruiting and training new pilots on Earth's moon, spoke up. Our people are ready. They're angry. They want to hit back. Captain Jin Ho-song nodded agreement. He had been running combat simulations in abandoned mining stations, pushing crews to their limits. The question is, when do we strike? If we attack too soon before we're ready, they'll crush us. But if we wait too long, more colonies die. Park looked around the room at these men and women who had given up peaceful lives to prepare for war. They deserve the truth. We strike now, not because we're ready, but because we have no choice. The colonies near the Veil Nebula are being wiped out faster. Thraxis says the Council is accelerating their timeline. They're getting impatient. Jiwon Baek had been working non-stop for 3 years, barely sleeping, pushing herself to create better weapons and defenses. Her eyes were shadowed with exhaustion, but her voice was firm. The hybrid weapons are ready. I've integrated alien plasma technology with human kinetic systems. They'll be surprised by what we can do. Her brother Taejin had finally been brought into the secret 6 months ago. It had broken something between them when Jiwon revealed she'd been lying to him for years. But he understood why. Now he was training as a combat pilot, determined to protect the colonies he had once visited in peace. What's our first target? Taejin asked. Commander Sora Nam highlighted a section of space near New Sol Colony. Intelligence suggests a Carrick's raiding party will hit this area in 2 weeks. 10 ships. They think they're hunting helpless prey. We'll show them they're wrong. The plan was simple but dangerous. 3 Wraith-class frigates would hide in the debris field near New Sol. When the Carricks arrived to attack the colony, the human ships would strike from ambush, fast, brutal, no mercy. Commander Nam would lead the mission personally. She chose her crews carefully, people who had lost family to the raids, who had reasons to fight with everything they had. Doyen Lee wanted to go with them, but Park needed him coordinating the larger fleet. Your time will come, she promised him. This is just the beginning. The 2 weeks of waiting were torture. The crews trained constantly. Jiwon made last-minute adjustments to the weapon systems. Taejin and his fellow pilots ran simulation after simulation, learning to fly the new ships. On Earth, President Yoon-ji Kwon prepared for the worst. If this mission went wrong, if the Council discovered humanity's deception, retaliation would be swift. She had evacuation plans ready, ways to scatter Earth's population to hidden colonies if necessary, but she prayed it wouldn't come to that. The day of the mission arrived. Commander Sora Nam and her 3 frigates jumped to the debris field near New Sol and powered down to minimal systems. They became ghosts, invisible to most sensors, waiting in the dark. Aboard the lead ship, Nam watched her displays with the patience of a predator. Her crew was silent, tense. Hours passed. Then a day. Had the intelligence been wrong? Had the Carricks changed their plans? Then the sensors flickered. 10 ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Massive, bulky vessels covered in organic-looking armor. The Carrick swarm. Insectoid warriors who served the Council with fanatical devotion. Nam watched as the Carrick ships moved toward New Sol Colony, weapons charging. The colony's population was 3,000 humans who had no idea death was approaching. They had no defenses, no way to fight back. Wait, Nam whispered to her crew. Let them commit. Let them think they're safe. The Carrick ships entered optimal firing range. Their weapons began to glow. And that's when Nam gave the order. All ships, weapons free. Fire everything. The 3 Wraith-class frigates dropped their stealth and opened fire simultaneously. Jiwon's hybrid weapons tore through the Carrick ships like they were made of paper. Plasma beams superheated armor while kinetic rounds punched through hulls. The Carricks had been expecting defenseless prey. They found wolves instead. The first 3 Carrick ships exploded before they could even react. The others scattered, trying to return fire, but the Wraith-class frigates were too fast. They moved like dancers, weaving between shots, their weapons never stopping. Nam's ship targeted the largest Carrick's vessel, clearly the command ship. Ram them, she ordered. Her crew looked at her in shock. Ramming was suicide. But Nam's eyes were cold. They wanted a massacre. Let's give them one. The Wraith-class frigate accelerated directly at the Carrick's command ship. At the last second, Nam fired everything, every weapon, every missile, everything the ship had. The combined impact was catastrophic. Both ships disintegrated in a flash of light. but Nam and her crew had ejected an escape pod seconds before impact. They floated in the wreckage, watching as the remaining 2 Wraith-class frigates finished off the confused and panicked Carrack ships. The entire battle lasted 7 minutes, 10 Carrack ships destroyed. 0 human ships lost, though Nam's frigate was gone. New Sol colony was safe, and humanity had drawn first blood. The news spread through human space like wildfire. The Council tried to suppress it, but too many people had seen. Civilians on New Sol had watched the battle. Recordings were smuggled across the galaxy. Humanity was armed. Humanity had fought back. And humanity had won. In the Council chambers on Axios Prime, Veloth received the reports with something that might have been anger. If crystalline beings could feel such things. Impossible. Humans are pacified. They have no military. But the evidence was undeniable. 3 ships. Advanced weapons. Tactics that spoke of trained military crews. The humans had been lying for years, building in secret, preparing for war. Find their shipyards, Veloth commanded. Find their bases. Destroy everything. The human extermination is now the Council's top priority. Across the galaxy, species that had been quietly watching humanity's integration began to whisper among themselves, some with hope, others with fear. But all of them understood that something fundamental had changed. The Silence Protocol, the great lie that had kept the galaxy pacified for 10,000 years, had been broken. And it had been broken by the youngest species, the ones who were supposed to be the easiest to exterminate. Admiral Park received Commander Nam's report with relief and dread in equal measure. Relief that the mission succeeded. Dread because she knew what came next. They'll come for Earth now, she said to Doyen Lee. Everything we have. It won't be enough. Lee looked at the tactical displays showing their 90 ships against the Council's thousands. Then we make them bleed for every meter of space. We make the cost so high they'll question whether it's worth it. And if that's not enough, Lee's face. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in 300 years. Representatives from every member species filled the great chamber on Axios Prime. The air hummed with tension and fear. Veloth stood at the center, its crystalline body pulsing with angry light. The humans have violated the Silence Protocol. They have built weapons of war. They have attacked Council forces. This cannot stand. The Carrack's ambassador, a massive insectoid covered in scarred chitin, clicked its mandibles in rage. They destroyed 10 of our ships. My people demand justice, demand blood. Other species murmured agreement, but some remained silent. The Therian delegation, mammalian beings with gray fur, watched the proceedings with careful eyes. They remembered when their own people had been offered membership in the Council. They remembered the price. On Earth, President Yoonji Kwan watched the Council broadcast with her cabinet. They all knew what was coming. The only question was how bad it would be. When Veloth spoke again, its voice carried across every channel in the galaxy. The Council issues this ultimatum to humanity. Surrender immediately. Dismantle your illegal military. Execute all personnel involved in this treason. You have 72 hours to comply. Failure to do so will result in total war. Kwan stood up slowly. Her aides tried to stop her, begged her to reconsider, but she pushed past them and walked to the broadcast studio. No prepared speech. No diplomatic language. Just raw truth. She activated the transmitter, knowing her words would reach every corner of the galaxy. Her face appeared on billions of screens across hundreds of worlds. My name is Yoonji Kwan, President of Earth. I am speaking to the Galactic Council, and to every species listening. Her voice was steady, though her hands shook. You demanded we trust you. You promised us peace. You asked us to disarm to make ourselves defenseless. And we did. We believed you. She paused, letting the words sink in. But you lied. The Silence Protocol was never about peace. It was about making us easy to kill. You have been systematically exterminating our colonies, murdering our people, and you thought we would never fight back. Kwan's eyes blazed with fury. You were wrong. Humanity will not surrender. Humanity will not bow. We will fight with everything we have. And if we must die, we will die standing, not kneeling at your feet. You wanted silence. You will get the roar of warships instead. She cut the transmission. Around her, the cabinet sat in stunned silence. No going back now. Earth had declared war on the galaxy. Admiral Hyejin Park received President Kwan's message aboard the rebuilt UESS Indomitable. The old battlecruiser had been salvaged from a scrapyard and refitted with G1 Bag's hybrid weapons. It was the flagship of humanity's tiny fleet, a symbol of defiance. All ships, Park broadcast to the 90 vessels under her command, battle stations. The Council will respond with force. We make our stand at the Void Gate. The Void Gate was a natural choke point in space, a narrow corridor of stable spacetime between two massive gravity wells. Any fleet wanting to reach Earth from Council space had to pass through it. If humanity could hold the gate, they could buy Earth time. Captain Doyen Lee commanded the Vanguard, 12 Wraith-class frigates positioned at the gate's entrance. His orders were simple: delay, harass, make them bleed. The Council didn't make them wait long. 3 days after Kwan's speech, sensors detected a massive fleet entering the Void Gate region. 300 ships. The Dravine Empire. Reptilian warriors who served as the Council's primary military force. Lee watched the ships approach on his displays. 300 against 12. The odds were absurd. But he had trained for this. They all had. All ships tight formation, Lee ordered. We're going to hurt them where it counts. Target their flagship first. If we can take out their command, the rest might falter. The Dravine came on confidently, weapons charging. They expected human ships to scatter and run. Instead, the 12 frigates accelerated directly at them. Lee's ship, the Defiant, led the charge. Weapon systems screamed as they fired everything. Missiles streaked across the void. Plasma beams carved through space. The Dravine flagship's shields flickered under the assault. But it wasn't enough. The Dravine returned fire and human ships started dying. The frigate beside Lee exploded in a flash of light. Then another. His crew shouted damage reports as the Defiant's hull began to fail. All power to forward weapons, Lee commanded. His ship was dying, he knew it. But he could make it count. The Defiant rammed the Dravine flagship at full speed. Lee's last transmission was calm, almost peaceful. Earth survives. The explosion destroyed both ships and damaged a dozen others around them. The Dravine formation broke apart in confusion. That's when Admiral Park arrived with the main fleet. 60 human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel right on top of the scattered Dravine forces. Park's tactics were ruthless. No honor, no mercy. Just killing efficiency. Human ships rammed Dravine vessels. Boarding parties used stolen airlocks to breach enemy hulls. Young Suhan led one such team, fighting through corridors with weapons that hadn't been used in decades. It was brutal, desperate combat. And humans had been preparing for it while the Dravine had gotten soft. Commander Sora Nam's remaining frigates hit and ran, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. They were ghosts in the void, killing and vanishing. The battle lasted 6 hours. Human ships died by the dozens, but the Dravine died by the hundreds. When the surviving Dravine forces finally retreated, they left behind 2/3 of their fleet. Admiral Park surveyed the wreckage. 60 human ships had become 20. The cost was terrible. But they had held the Void Gate. Earth was safe for now. In the aftermath, Captain Jin Ho-song worked to recover survivors from the wreckage. They found Commander Nam's crew floating in damaged escape pods. They found wounded Dravine warriors who surrendered rather than die in the void. And they found the body of Doyen Lee, still strapped into his captain's chair, frozen but peaceful. The news of the Battle of the Void Gate spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. 300 Dravine ships reduced to 100 survivors. A human victory that shouldn't have been possible. On planets across Council space, species that had been quietly oppressed for centuries began to whisper. If humans could fight back, maybe they could too. The Therian delegation contacted Earth in secret, offering intelligence about Council fleet movements. Other species, ones humanity had never heard of, sent similar messages. The galaxy was waking up to the lies they had been fed, and it was angry. Veloth called another council session, but this time many species didn't attend. The Silence Protocol, the foundation of galactic peace, was crumbling, and everyone knew it. On Earth, G1 Bayek worked without sleeping. Her brother Taijin had survived the battle, but his ship was crippled. She threw herself into her work to avoid thinking about how close she had come to losing him. She pulled up designs that had been theoretical, too dangerous or expensive to build before. But now with the galaxy at war, nothing was too expensive. Nothing was too dangerous. I can build something bigger, she told Admiral Park, not a frigate or a cruiser, Something that can face their capital ships and win, but I need 6 months and every resource we have. Park looked at the designs. A dreadnought-class vessel, massive and bristling with weapons. It would require stripping resources from everywhere else, leaving Earth vulnerable. But if it worked, it could change the course of the war. Build it, Park ordered. Call it the Ragnarok, and make sure it lives up to the name. Young Suhan received a promotion to commander after his actions in the boarding assault. He didn't want it. He wanted his friends back, the ones who had died in the battle. But duty didn't care about wants. He was given command of one of the new frigates coming out of the hidden shipyards. His first mission was to escort refugee ships from the outer colonies to Earth. Millions of humans were fleeing the war zones, afraid the Council would start targeting civilians. They were right to be afraid. Reports came in of Carrick's ships bombarding colonies from orbit. The Council had abandoned any pretense of honorable warfare. This was extermination, pure and simple, but humanity wasn't alone anymore. Therian warships began appearing alongside human vessels, then ships from the Orathan Collective, a species that had been secretly maintaining a fleet for 1,000 years, waiting for someone to challenge the Council. Admiral Park found herself commanding not just human forces but a coalition. Species that had been enemies or strangers were now allies against the Council's tyranny. Tajan Bek recovered from his injuries and returned to duty. His ship was destroyed, but there were always more ships that needed pilots. He joined the defense fleet guarding Earth's orbital shipyards, where his sister was building the Ragnarok. One night they shared a meal in the station's small cafeteria. Jiwan looked exhausted, thinner than she should be. Tajan wanted to tell her to rest, but he knew she wouldn't listen. "Do you think we can win?" Tajan asked quietly. Jiwan was silent for a long moment. "I think we can make them wish they had never started this. And sometimes that's enough." In the council chambers, Veloth stared at reports of more species joining humanity's rebellion. The silence protocol was dead. The old order was collapsing. And for the first time in its long existence, Veloth felt something new. Fear. The Ragnarok launched 6 months after the Battle of the Void Gate. Jiwan Bayek stood in the observation deck and watched her creation come to life. It was massive, larger than any ship humanity had ever built. Weapons bristled from every angle. Armor plates thick enough to withstand sustained bombardment covered its hull. Admiral Heejin Park stood beside her. "It's beautiful and terrifying." "It needs to be both," Jiwan replied. Her voice was hollow with exhaustion. She had pushed herself to the breaking point to finish this ship. Several times her assistants had found her collapsed at her workstation, but it was done. The Ragnarok was ready for war. The coalition fleet had grown to 300 ships. Human vessels, Therian cruisers, Orathan fighters, and ships from a dozen other species who had secretly maintained military forces while pretending to follow the silence protocol. It wasn't enough to match the full might of the Council, but it was enough to fight. Admiral Park called a meeting of all coalition commanders. They gathered in a secure facility on Mars, faces projected from across the solar system. The plan was audacious to the point of insanity. "We're going to attack Axios Prime," Park announced, the Council's headquarters. "We're going to tear down the station and end the silence protocol forever." The room erupted in arguments. Axios Prime was the most heavily defended location in the galaxy. Thousands of ships protected it. Attacking it directly was suicide. But Commander Young Suhan spoke up, his voice cutting through the chaos. "They won't expect it. That's our advantage. They think we're on the defensive. They think we're trying to survive. We show them we're here to win," Commander Soranam agreed. "I've been running reconnaissance for 8 months. I know their patrol patterns, their blind spots. We can get a strike force through their defenses if we're willing to pay the price." "What price?" asked a Therian captain. Nam's face was grim. "Half the fleet, probably. Maybe more. But if we succeed, if we take down Axios Prime, the Council loses its command structure. Without leadership, their forces will fragment." Captain Jinho Song had been training ground assault teams in secret. "I have 5,000 soldiers ready for orbital insertion. We can take the station from the inside while the fleet keeps their ships busy." Park looked around the room at these warriors from a dozen species. They were tired, scared, but determined. "We vote. All in favor of attacking Axios Prime, say yes." The vote was unanimous. They prepared for 3 months. Every ship was repaired and rearmed. Soldiers trained for zero-gravity combat. Pilots ran simulation after simulation of the approach to Axios Prime. Everyone knew the odds. Many wouldn't come back. Taejin Baek was assigned to the first assault wave. His sister Jiwon tried to convince him to stay behind, to take a safer posting. But Taejin refused. "If I don't fight, why should anyone else?" he said. "We all have family. We all have reasons to stay safe. But someone has to go." The night before the attack, Jiwon gave Taejin a small data chip. "This has all my latest weapon modifications. If your ship gets damaged, if you need to improvise, the plans are here. Come back, Taejin, please." He hugged her tightly. "I'll try. That's all I can promise." The Coalition fleet jumped to Axios Prime with 300 ships. The Ragnarok led the formation, its weapons already charging. They emerged from faster-than-light travel directly into the Council's defensive perimeter. Alarms screamed across Axios Prime. Thousands of ships scrambled to intercept. The Council had never been attacked at home before. They weren't prepared for the fury of freed species. The battle began immediately. Human frigates darted between the larger Council vessels, weapons firing constantly. Therion cruisers formed defensive lines to protect the slower ships. Orthan fighters swarmed like angry insects, overwhelming enemy point defenses, and the Ragnarok became death itself. Jiwon's hybrid weapons tore through Council ships like they were made of paper. Each shot from the Dreadnought's main guns destroyed a vessel. The Council forces fell back in shock and terror, but the cost was terrible. Human ships died by the dozen. Therion cruisers exploded in brilliant flashes. Taejin's fighter squadron was supposed to have 12 ships. By the time they reached the station, only 3 remained. His was one of them. Captain Jin Ho Song's ground forces launched from dropships toward the station. Half the ships were destroyed before landing. Song himself led the assault on the main docking bay, fighting through automated defenses and Velothian guards. Commander Sora Nam's frigates provided cover, but her ship took a direct hit that vaporized half the crew. She kept fighting from the damaged bridge, bleeding from a dozen wounds, refusing to abandon her post. Admiral Park watched from the Ragnarok's bridge as the battle devolved into chaos. Ships on both sides were dying, but the Coalition was pushing forward, getting closer to the station. Just a little more, just a bit further. Then disaster struck. A Carrack supercarrier emerged from faster-than-light travel with 200 fresh ships. Reinforcements. The tide began to turn against the Coalition. Young-Soo. Han made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. His cruiser was crippled, engines failing, weapons mostly offline, but he still had control of the ship's reactor. "All hands abandon ship," he ordered. "Get to the escape pods, now." His crew protested, but he made it an order. They had seconds. As the last crew member evacuated, Han set the reactor to overload and aimed his ship at the Carrack supercarrier. The explosion when his ship hit was like a small star being born. The supercarrier was destroyed instantly. Dozens of other ships were caught in the blast, and Commander Young-Soo Han was gone. Taejin Baek and his 2 remaining squadron mates made it through the station's outer defenses. They landed in a damaged hangar bay and joined Song's ground forces. The fighting inside the station was brutal. Hand-to-hand combat in zero gravity, plasma weapons and human rifles firing in corridors. They fought for hours. Taejin saw his squadron mates die. He saw Jin Ho Song take a plasma blast to the chest while protecting wounded soldiers. He kept moving forward because stopping meant dying. They reached the council chamber where Veloth and the other council leaders were trying to coordinate the defense. The crystalline being stood tall, weapons in its manipulator appendages. "Surrender," demanded one of the human soldiers. Veloth's response was to attack. The fight was short and violent. Veloth was powerful, but it was alone against dozens of soldiers from multiple species. When it finally fell, its body shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. On the Ragnarok's bridge, Admiral Park received the signal. The council chamber was captured. The council leaders were dead or surrendering. Axios Prime was theirs. "All ships cease fire," Park broadcast. "To all council forces, your leaders are gone. Lay down your weapons. The war is over." It took hours for the message to spread. Some council ships kept fighting. Others surrendered immediately. Some simply jumped away to faster-than-light speeds, fleeing to distant corners of the galaxy. When the fighting finally stopped, Park looked at the casualty reports and felt sick. The Coalition had started with 300 ships. 70 remained operational. Thousands of soldiers were dead. Entire crews were wiped out. They had won. But the cost was devastating. 10 years passed. The galaxy rebuilt slowly. The Galactic Council was dissolved. In its place, species formed a new federation based on equality and mutual defense. Every species could maintain a military. No one would be defenseless again. Commander Young-Soo Han was honored with the highest medals from a dozen worlds given posthumously. His statue stood in the memorial garden on Earth, alongside thousands of others who had died in the war. Taijin Beck had died during the final assault on the council chamber, holding a corridor so wounded soldiers could evacuate. His sister Jiwon built the memorial herself, crying as she carved his name into the stone. She became the Federation's chief defense engineer, ensuring that no species would ever face what humanity had faced. Her designs protected billions. Admiral Heejin Park retired after the war. She was old now, her hair white, her body failing, but she lived long enough to see the new Federation thrive. She spent her final years in the memorial garden, visiting the graves of those she had commanded. A young cadet, barely 20 years old, found her there one day. "Admiral Park, I'm sorry to disturb you. I just wanted to ask, was it worth it?" "All the death?" Park looked at the stars above them, stars that were now free, safe, protected by the Federation's fleet. "We didn't choose this fight," she said quietly, "but we chose to survive, and we chose to make sure no other species would face the same choice. But so many died. Yes. And I carry their names with me every day." Park stood slowly, her joints aching, but because they died, billions live free. "Is that worth it?" "I don't know, but it's what we have." The cadet saluted and left. Park remained in the garden as the sun set, surrounded by the names of heroes. President Yoon-ji Kwan had died during the war, killed when a council ship managed to strike Earth. But her final speech was played every year on the anniversary of the war's end. Her words reminded everyone why they had fought. The galaxy had expected humanity's stillness. They had expected compliance and death. Instead, they heard the roar of warships, the roar of a species that refused to die quietly, and that roar changed everything. 50 years.